Disclaimer. This video contains intense and frightening content meant for entertainment purposes. It may include scenes that some viewers may find disturbing or unsettling. We recommend viewer discretion, especially for those sensitive to horror themes or with underlying medical conditions that could be affected by intense content. The events portrayed in this video are entirely fictional, and any resemblance to real-life situations or individuals is coincidental. We do not endorse harmful or illegal activities. By continuing to watch, you acknowledge the content warning and proceed at your own discretion.
Story 1. The Haunting of Desolation Asylum. The wind howled through the desolate trees, carrying with it an eerie chill that sent shivers down my spine. I stood before the looming, decaying structure of the abandoned mental hospital. It had been years since anyone had set foot in this place, and stories of its dark history had become the stuff of legend. I had always been drawn to the macabre, and tonight I was determined to explore the secrets hidden within these crumbling walls. As I pushed open the creaking, rusted gate, I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to the patients who had once called this place home. Rumors of abuse, experimental treatments, and unexplained deaths had plagued the hospital's history. The moon cast eerie shadows on the cracked pavement as I cautiously stepped inside. The building's facade was a nightmarish blend of faded white paint, broken windows, and ivy creeping up the walls like gnarled fingers. Graffiti and symbols of the occult adorned the entrance, a testament to the morbid curiosity that had drawn others here before me. My flashlight flickered to life, cutting through the oppressive darkness that enveloped the interior. The air inside was damp and heavy, carrying the unmistakable scent of decay. It seemed as though the very walls themselves held onto the memories of the suffering that had occurred within these forsaken halls. My heart raced as I ventured deeper into the hospital, the sound of my footsteps echoing ominously. I entered a long, dimly lit corridor, its floor strewn with debris and shattered glass. The walls were lined with the remnants of straitjackets and broken furniture. I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched, as if the tormented souls of the past still lingered here, trapped in an eternal torment. As I explored further, I came across a room that had clearly been used for shock therapy. Rusty chairs and tables with leather straps stood in the center, surrounded by ancient electrical equipment. It was then that I heard a faint, distant whisper that sent a shiver down my spine. "Help me," it seemed to say, barely audible over the wind's mournful howl. My heart pounding, I followed the sound of the whisper down another corridor, each step feeling heavier than the last. The voice led me to a small, dimly lit room at the end of the hallway. Inside, I found a dusty old journal lying on a rotting mattress. It appeared to belong to a former nurse, and its pages were filled with disturbing accounts of the hospital's patients and the atrocities that had occurred within these walls. As I read, I became aware of a presence in the room. A chilling sensation washed over me, and I turned slowly to find a figure standing in the shadows. It was a woman, her tattered white gown hanging loosely from her frail frame. Her eyes were empty voids, and her pale, gaunt face seemed to emit an otherworldly glow. "Help me," she whispered again, her voice a mournful plea. My flashlight flickered and the room plunged into darkness. Panic seized me as I fumbled to relight it. But when the beam pierced the blackness once more, the woman was gone. My heart raced and I stumbled out of the room, desperate to escape the malevolent presence that now seemed to fill the hospital. Back in the corridor, I heard whispers all around me, a cacophony of tortured souls begging for release. The walls themselves seemed to close in, and the air grew thicker with each passing moment. I knew I had to leave, had to get out of this nightmarish place. But as I made my way back to the entrance, the door slammed shut with a deafening crash. I was trapped. The voices grew louder, more desperate, and I could feel their cold, spectral hands reaching out for me. It was then that I realized the horrifying truth. I had become just another lost soul in this haunted hospital, destined to join the ranks of those who had suffered here before me. As I sank to the floor, the darkness closing in, I heard one final whisper, different from the rest. It was the voice of the nurse from the journal, and she spoke with a sinister grin. "Welcome to our asylum. You'll never leave." The flashlight fell from my trembling hand, its beam extinguished, and the once-abandoned mental hospital claimed another victim, its secrets forever shrouded in darkness. Story 2, Emily's Forgotten Nightmare. The abandoned mental hospital loomed on the outskirts of town, a foreboding monument to a bygone era of cruelty and neglect. The building, with its broken windows and crumbling facade, had become a place of local legend. As teenagers, we often dared each other to venture inside, and on one fateful night, we decided to explore its dark mysteries. My friends and I gathered at the entrance, flashlights in hand, and nervous laughter filling the air. The moon cast an eerie glow on the decrepit structure as we pushed open the rusted gate. This place had been closed for decades, and the stories of mistreatment and suffering still sent shivers down our spines. The hospital's interior was a labyrinth of echoing corridors, each one darker and more unsettling than the last. The air was heavy with the scent of decay, and the sound of our footsteps echoed like a macabre symphony. We wandered deeper into the heart of the hospital, drawn by a morbid curiosity we couldn't resist. As we explored, we came across a room that seemed relatively intact, its door still hanging on rusty hinges. Inside, we found a collection of old medical records scattered across the floor. The records detailed the names and treatments of former patients, their stories of despair and suffering etched onto the yellowed pages. One particular record caught my eye, a patient named Emily, who had been admitted as a young girl and had spent most of her life within these walls. Her case was marked with red ink, as if it was something extraordinary. The notes spoke of strange occurrences surrounding Emily, sightings of shadowy figures and unexplained phenomena. Intrigued, we decided to dig deeper into Emily's story. We followed the records to a hidden section of the hospital, a series of underground tunnels that had long been forgotten. The air grew colder as we descended, and the walls seemed to close in on us. Suddenly, we heard a whisper, faint but unmistakable. "Help me," it pleaded, sending a chill down our spines. We followed the sound until we reached a small chamber with a rusted door. Inside, we found a withered, ancient woman huddled in the corner. Her hair was matted, her eyes wide with fear. "Emily," I whispered, my voice trembling. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. She had been trapped in these tunnels for decades alone and forgotten, her mind fractured by the isolation. As we helped Emily out of the chamber and into the moonlight, we realized that the true horror of the abandoned mental hospital was not the ghosts of the past, but the living nightmare that Emily had endured. We vowed to help her find the peace and care she had been denied for so long, leaving behind the haunted hospital and its dark secrets, determined to bring justice to those who had suffered within its walls. Story 3, Whispers of the Haunting. The abandoned mental hospital had always been a place of dread in our small town. It stood on the outskirts, hidden away from the world like a sinister secret. Nobody knew for sure why it had been closed, but the stories that circulated were enough to keep most people away. However, curiosity got the best of me, and one fateful night, I decided to explore its mysteries. I arrived at the decaying building, the moon casting an eerie glow on its dilapidated walls. The silence was palpably broken only by the distant howling of the wind. As I pushed open the rusty gate, it groaned in protest, setting the tone for the night ahead. My flashlight cut through the darkness as I ventured inside. The air was damp and heavy, and a sense of foreboding washed over me. The hospital was a maze of abandoned rooms, their walls adorned with peeling wallpaper and the remnants of forgotten lives. I couldn't help but wonder about the people who had once lived here, their hopes and dreams shattered by the cruel hand of fate. As I explored further, I stumbled upon a room that seemed strangely preserved. The furniture was old but still intact, and the room had an eerie sense of familiarity. It was as if time had stood still in this place. I felt drawn to a dusty old photograph on the nightstand depicting a young woman with hauntingly familiar eyes. Just as I reached out to touch the photograph, a soft voice echoed in the room. "Welcome back," it whispered, sending a chill down my spine. I turned, but there was no one there. Heart pounding, I continued to explore the hospital, each room revealing more mysteries and unanswered questions. In one room, I found a diary that belonged to a former patient. The entries were filled with tales of strange occurrences, of whispers in the night and shadows that moved on their own. The diary spoke of a malevolent presence that seemed to lurk within the hospital's walls, a darkness that preyed on the vulnerable. It described a woman with haunting eyes who had once been a patient, driven to madness by the entity that dwelled here. As I read, I became acutely aware of a presence behind me. I turned slowly, and there she was, the woman from the photograph, her eyes filled with a malevolent hunger. She reached out towards me, and I could feel her icy grip closing in. In a panic, I fled the room and raced towards the exit, the woman's whispers growing louder with each step. The once abandoned mental hospital had claimed another victim, and as I stumbled out into the moonlit night, I knew that I had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. The hospital remained a place of dread, its dark secrets hidden from the world. But I would carry the memory of that night with me forever, a chilling reminder that some mysteries were never meant to be uncovered.